Shalom. I like to say all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Kodesh. Double honors unto the apostles and elders of GMS for the true leaders of Israel today, and salutations to my Akim who do this work in truth and sincerity, who are risking their lives and their freedoms to do so, as well as the scattered Israelites who come looking like the heathen but are not, by way of their forefathers' seeds who are Israelite men. The true name of the Most High is Yahweh, and his son's name is Yahushai, and the Lord's holy chosen people are the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, as were the ones who suffer under the curses in the book of Deuteronomy. This is your brother Yakale from the GMS Jamaica Kingston camp, and this video is about the prophecy of World War III. This is Revelation chapter 11 and verse 14. The second woe is past, which is talking about World War II, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly, which is talking about World War III. And World War III will be taking place in the so-called Middle East, and it will be called Armageddon. This is Revelation chapter 16 and verse 16. And he gathered them together, he who, Yahweh Shemeshai, into a place called, in the Hebrew tongue, Armageddon. Alright, so it will be the war of Armageddon over there in the so-called Middle East, and the heathen will be taking part in it. Alright, this is Joel chapter 3 and verse 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war. Wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves, and come all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about thither, cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord Yahweh. Let the heathen be awakened, and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, Yahweh's judgment, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Alright, so this is a prophecy and what we're seeing in these final days, because we are in the end of days before the destruction of America, which is Mystery Babylon the Great. We're seeing the buildup of the prophecies, all of them, the Mark of the Beast prophecy, the World War III prophecy, the prophecy of famine, Jacob's trouble prophecy. Okay, all of these things are well on its way. So in regards to the World War III prophecy, this video right here from I-24 News English, U.S. to join Israeli drill to prepare for Iran strike. All right, so now, this is the kind of thing where we look at it and we're like, okay, this won't necessarily make World War III pop off, right? Well, we know that for mostly a fact, I'd say, because World War III will not happen until the fulfillment of the Mark of the Beast prophecy, which is that microchip, Revelation chapter 13, verse 16, 17, 18, Revelation chapter 15 as well, and Revelation chapter 13, verse 10, which talks about that hour of temptation. All right, because once World War III starts, then the destruction of America will come, and with the destruction of America comes the deliverance of the elect of the nation of Israel, the 1/3 out of America, and the remaining elect members from the four corners of the earth. All right, so first, that Mark of the Beast prophecy has to be fulfilled. So that's what we really look towards right now. Okay, the fulfillment of that. Okay, but in regards to something like this adds fuel to the fire, so to speak. This adds to, heading towards this prophecy. All right, so just a little bit on this video.
Military correspondent for Jane's Defense Weekly. Good evening to you, Yaakov.
Good evening.
Help me here. It's a little strange. Israel wants to maintain its military options independent, and yet now it counts on U.S. refueling. What's happening?
I think there are a couple of factors that could help us make sense of this. First of all, it's clear that there's no American military deterrent against Iran at this time. Everybody knows that. The Iranians know that. The Americans know that. And the Israelis know that. But there is an Israeli military deterrent. There is a posture that you just referred to. And so this exercise serves everybody's needs by placing the Israeli military strike option back on the table. And the Americans seem to want that option to be back on the table, not for activation at this time, but to remind the Iranians that it's there. And another thing I think that's worth keeping in mind is that there is a very good relationship between the defense establishments of Israel and the United States. However, the diplomatic relationship goes up and down between the governments. The defense establishments have maintained a very good level of cooperation throughout the years, and this is an expression of that as well.
Yeah, well, the Pentagon versus State Department, it's long old story as we know it. Now, there's
Right.
a growing concern within Israeli military circles that the United States actually abandoned the whole Iranian issue altogether. And is this true? Is this a true sentiment?
I wouldn't say that the United States abandoned the Iranian issue. What I would say is that the United States has prioritized great power competition with China and with Russia as its number one priority. This is official American national security doctrine. It has been written and published openly. It's not a secret. And that means that the United States is shifting away very clearly. We saw that with Afghanistan. We're seeing it with Iraq. It's shifting away from lengthy conflicts in this region against asymmetrical enemies, and it is much more interested in having America's allies, the United States and Sunni countries, deal with Iran with American assistance. Now, that doesn't mean that America has left the region, but it does mean that it has stepped down its commitment. And as a result of that, there is more impetus and more expectations in Washington for this regional bloc that is forming for Israel and the Sunni countries to step up when it comes to dealing with Iran.
Right. Now, what are the actual ramifications of an Israeli strike in Iran if that happens? What will happen?
It's very difficult to predict, but I think there are more likely scenarios and less likely scenarios. I mean, the first thing I think we should note is that this year, the year 2022, has been chosen by the Israeli Air Force to be the year that the Iran strike option comes back to the priority list. This is after years of prioritizing other things like the war between the wars in Syria and building up attack capabilities against Hezbollah in Lebanon, which remains the top conventional threat. So this year is the year that, the Israeli Air Force is really putting this option back at the top of its priorities. We're seeing that with budgeting. We're seeing that with the most detailed planning that's now underway in terms of intelligence, ammunition selections, aerial platforms, refueling. All of this is now center stage in the Israeli Air Force. Now, if this strike ever does come to pass, it seems that the most likely scenario will be that Hezbollah will become very quickly involved in the response by the Iranian Shiite axis, and a conflict, likely a full-scale conflict, but of course it's impossible to know, would likely follow an Israeli strike in Iran between Israel and Hezbollah. So you're looking at least two fronts: Lebanon, Iran firing missiles from the east, Hezbollah getting involved from Lebanon, Syrian militias from Iraq. We don't know whether the Gaza Strip and its terror factions would get involved. So multi-arena conflict is the most likely scenario for that kind of strike, but not the only scenario.
Right. So it will happen eventually, but not quite as yet. All right. As I mentioned, that mark of the beast prophecy has to come first, but it will happen in this kind of manner. All right. Because the U.S. will, in fact, join Israel to go to war, and Israel is going to draw them out. It says it in the scriptures. This is Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 45. Therefore hear ye the counsel of the Lord Yahweh that he hath taken against Babylon, Babylon referring to America, and his purpose is that he hath purpose against the land of the Chaldeans referring to the Edomites, or the so-called white people who rule this wicked world today. Job chapter 9 verse 24, the earth is given into the hands of the wicked. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Who's the least of the flock? These Israelis. Okay. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. Right. So Israel is going to make moves against Iran. Yes, it will happen. Okay. And America is going to be forced to go to war. Yahweh Shemeshai hath ordained it already. And as you can see at the end, it says, surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. They're going to lose. Okay, America is going to lose. And when America goes to war as well with Israel, the NATO allies shall join in, okay, to fight against Iran and to fight against Iran's allies, which includes Russia. In the book of Ezekiel, chapter 38 and verse 2, it says, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, which is talking about the Russians, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against them, as they dwell in the land of Gog and Magog today. Okay, and say, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth, and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor. Okay, so the military, even a great company, the allies of Russia, with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Persia, which is Iran, Ethiopia, and Libya, which are the Hamite countries, the so-called Africans, with them, all of them with shield and helmet. And Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah, which is talking about the Turkish people, Turkey, of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee. Be thou prepared, and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. See? So once it is that the state of Israel, the Israelis, and America, and NATO makes their move against Iran, then Russia is going to be a guard unto them. Okay? And you know, once that happens, that's what it is. Okay? In the book of Joel chapter 2, and verse 20, but I remove far off from you the northern army, which is talking about the US and NATO, and I'll drive him into a land barren and desolate, all right, which is talking about towards Saudi Arabia, with his face towards the east sea, which is talking about the Euphrates River, and his hinder part towards the utmost sea, which is talking about the Red Sea. And his sting shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he hath done great things. So once again, they will lose when they go to war against Iran and Russia and the rest of the allies on that end. Okay? And as you can see, it mentions the East Sea, the Euphrates River, and the Red Sea, the Almost Sea, which is the Red Sea, to let you know once again that the area of conflict will be over there in the so-called Middle East. And the World War III will happen, and eventually all of the missiles, those ICBM missiles, will be turned and shot against America and destroy her. And then the deliverance of the elect of Israel will occur. So that I'd like to say all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Shemi Shai Bashar Makak Wadash, Wa Abad, Babal, Shalom.